This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And brought to you this week by Voice, a new social media network that puts humans and creators first. Voice is free from bots and shady algorithms. They reward their communities for the content they create. Get early access now by signing up at voice.com/join. That's voice.com/join. And hi once again, Mike Blinder, publisher of Editor and Publisher magazine. And a study was performed just a few months ago from the Whitman Institute Strategies Initiative in conjunction with Creative Circle Media, a company you likely have heard of since it's been around for 20 years and owned and managed by a friend of our industry, Bill Ostendorf. Not only a provider of great services and design for hundreds of newspapers worldwide, but also the company that helps Editor and Publisher deliver our content as well. But the study that they worked together on took the COVID impact on the media industry and took it to a new level. Basically analyzing the perceptions of our readers, the news and messaging they crave, and more importantly, giving us advice on how we should be altering our content in order to meet the needs and desires of a pretty flipped out audience that's going through a lot of fear, a lot of changes. This study is pretty extensive, and I think it's giving us the keys and the real bullets of where we might want to shift our content producing so we can take advantage of this huge spike in audience that local media is experiencing right now, thanks to this phenomena, this crisis. So let's get to work. Let's analyze this recent COVID-19 impact project, a joint project of the Whitman Insight Strategies Initiative, and of course, Creative Circle Media's CEO, Bill Ostendorf. Mr. Ostendorf, welcome to E&P Reports. Full disclosure, if I may, you are the CEO of Creative Circle Media. Is that correct, sir? And you are the ones that help us at E&P with our fantastic website, also our partner in crime, the America's Newspapers website as well. You've donated a lot of your services. We love working with you, but that's not the reason we're here today, to talk about the E&P website. Bill, you let us know that you worked in conjunction with the Whitman Insight Strategies Initiative to put together a report that I found fascinating, because most of the reports I've seen about the impact of COVID on the industry have just been about growth of audience. Hey, we got the most audience we've ever had. People are running to newspaper websites. You went into the societal, how would you put that? How would you describe this? I mean, what's going on in our brains? Because
yeah, we're trying to figure out how COVID is affecting society and people and behavior, and how that might impact the news industry. So we're trying to get past, most surveys that I see about our industry are really shallow. They get the first level, but they don't tell you why, and they don't tell you how. And we work with Whitman Insight Strategies quite a bit, and they've done several national polls for us on things like classifieds and why people are reading or not reading newspapers. And this was another project that we participated in. This is something they do for their commercial clients, but we got them to make media part of what they were studying about society changes. And the results are pretty amazing.
Before we get into the results, could you just go over the methodology? Who was researched, what period of time, all that kind of stuff real quick?
All right. So this survey took place last May and June, I believe it was. And it was asking people how their media habits have changed, as well as how their other habits have changed. Like, what are they doing that's different, and how has COVID affected their thinking and their outlook and things like that. And this is when media websites were getting a lot more traffic.
Oh, definitely.
But we didn't really understand who they were or why they were coming to us, and this reveals some of the reasons anyway. And it dovetails with our philosophy that we try to coach our clients on, about how we have to start covering COVID and everything differently. We have to start covering it in a more intimate way, in a more personal way, And if I always say, if you're going to cover the school board, don't go to the school board meeting, ride the school bus. I mean, we have to connect with people. I think the reason newspapers are struggling is because we're totally disconnected from our readers.
In other words, what you're trying to say, this is not really, this is a study on what we could be doing to just be better. And the COVID pandemic is accelerating through this research what we should have been doing in the first place. Am I saying that?
I think it really illustrates how and why we have to cover people and relationships and get more intimate with people than we are right now. We're just so superficial in the way we cover people in our communities, and we've got to change that.
All right, well, there you go. So let's go through some of the information if we can. Take me on a tour of what you've learned and what this survey really came up with. Go ahead.
Well, we all see these surveys that show that the media is not trusted. In this survey, which was a national poll done by Whitman Inside Strategies, they do national polling mostly for Fortune 500 companies about how to market their products and what products they should develop and things like that. So they're good to work with for us because they're not all the research people in our industry keep asking the same questions the same way, and we want to get at something deeper than that. And so working with somebody who's not in the newspaper industry, they bring some really interesting insights to the table. So they asked, who do you trust? And at the positive end, of course, you have doctors and nurses and scientists. I think that's kind of fun that scientists are high on people's trust list, even though some politicians are saying don't trust the scientists. And so the CDC, and interesting, the U.S. military is way up there. Where is news media? Well, we're sandwiched between Vice President Mike Pence and the energy and oil and gas industries, which isn't great. The good news is we're ahead of President Trump and Mike Pence, but not by a lot. So,
in other words, for those of you that are just listening to this on your favorite podcast channel, we are serving some slides in this podcast video on YouTube. Basically, it's 1 out of 2. If I can just give the number, 1 out of 2 people trust us, 1 out of 2 don't trust us.
Yeah.
Right? They think
we're at 50%, basically.
50%. Okay, go ahead.
And doctors and healthcare workers right now are at 86%, and Congress is at 41%. So we're a lot closer to Congress and politicians that people don't trust than we are where we want to be. The problem is that these polls ask about the news media, and they don't ask about community media. They don't ask about your media, local media. And so we tried to drill down in this research and ask that question. And what we found is that local media is winning. We're winning the battle for eyeballs, but more importantly, we're winning the battle for credibility. People trust local papers much more than they trust media in general.
So full disclosure, that question was news media in general, 1 out of 2. But when you start to parcel out the hyper-local brands that make up local newspapers, it shoots up, correct?
Yes. And that's what I thought was true, but I didn't know. And so the one of the things they found, which we kind of know, is that 81% of Americans last spring, late last spring, early last summer, were following COVID-19 stories on a daily basis, which is really high. I mean, people were all over COVID trying to learn about it. An interesting thing was that a third of people, 34%, said they had started using new sources of news because of COVID-19. Wow, 34% returning to news outlets they'd never used before during COVID.
And this was verified by other research we've shown that people were desperate for some form of news information and they were circling back to media they may have forgotten. And this is
right, or never used.
Right.
And
exactly.
The good news is that according to this research, newspapers and local news were one of the biggest things they turned to. So 29% of people who tried new news outlets turned to local news. That's just below YouTube, and it's ahead of Facebook. So that's pretty amazing. That's a pretty good place to be. And newspapers made up, we think, were also cited 24% of the time, which would have put them right between Facebook and Instagram. So local newspapers were right up there with names like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. as sources of information for people. That's
We're
really
going to provide these slides as a link, and so you can see some of these numbers for those of you that are listening in audio. But what's also interesting is Bill's reaffirming that our websites have a higher reach than our print product. You're showing twice the audience through this research. We're going online for our content. We got to start accepting that more and more, correct?
right. As a builder of media websites, I'm a big fan of that research.
Of course.
Although you and I both still love print and think print has a future.
Yeah.
But so this is a quote from Bernard Whitman, the CEO of Whitman Inside Strategies. The ache for authenticity is overwhelming. Local media are best positioned to deliver authenticity.
So we are not tainted by the news echo chambers of the cable industry. People have separated us from them and see us as credible sources and aren't thinking of us as Fox or MSNBC or CNN. There you go.
Right. And when you start asking people who they trust the most and who is the best source of information, local news came out on top when it came to COVID. So local news was cited by 26% of the people in this survey. The next was broadcast news. And in this case, they're probably saying local news, local broadcast. And cable news was 16, Facebook. And then what I found great was Facebook fell to 6. So they don't really think Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter are the best sources of information. They think local news is the best source of information about COVID.
Amazing.
It's really heartening. And so when you say, who do you trust more lately? We asked the question, do you trust national news or local news? 57% said they trusted local news more lately than national news. So again, we're starting to parse out that when people say the media, all these polls all the time ask about the media, they don't ask about community publications, local broadcast outlets. They are much more trusted than those surveys that we're all depressed when we see that, only 50% of people trust media. But if the number is closer to 82%, as this chart implies, for local media, well, that should make local publishers everywhere feel a lot better.
Amazing.
So again, here's a quote from Bernard when we were going over this material. People are starved for content. They are starved for connections. That's why community media have so much to gain. You are already part of the community, and people feel like they know you or they should know you. COVID, I wrote a column that was published on editorandpublisher.com that COVID was, and I wrote this in April, that COVID is a golden opportunity for local media. If we can deliver during COVID, when people are desperate for this information, we could transform our status as media outlets in the community. If we could just get COVID right. And this research reaffirms that very strongly.
Excellent.
We have more eyeballs and we have an opportunity to provide the content everyone needs, but we're going to have to do better. We're going to have to change the way we cover things if we're going to take advantage of this opportunity. I wanted to get into another aspect of this that I think speaks to that more, and that is that our readers are scared. They're out there and they're worried. In this poll, 69% said they felt like life was getting harder. 67% felt sad. 63% said they were afraid. 60% felt that things were out of control. 60% said they felt depression. And 58% felt they were angry.
And isn't it funny that there's research out now that claims that people who live on social media are more apt to be depressed.
And more apt to be angry.
And more apt to be angry, yes.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And the problem is, in our coverage of COVID, I don't think we tapped into this. This is fear and anger are very powerful things. People want an outlet for this. They want to be able to vent, but they also want information. Bernard calls it this lust for community again. They want some sense of community, whether it's their church or their business where they work or their media. They want a sense of community, and local media are the place they're going to get that.
Which again goes to your beginning when you were saying we've got to step up to the plate and don't cover the school board, sit on the school bus. Is what if I may use that quote.
Yeah.
I mean,
we got to connect with people more. We're not doing that. And our coaching, when we redesign newspapers, when we train newsrooms, our coaching for decades has been, we have to connect with people more. Our stories, our headlines talk about when there's a tax increase, we might write a headline that says homeowners may see a tax increase. I'm like, why would you talk about, that's like, I'm reading this paper. Why would you talk about me? I'm like part of this conversation. Why would you talk about me like a third party? That'd be like standing together with three people and the two of them are talking about this homeowner and I'm standing right there. Why isn't that headline, you may see a tax increase? Right. Why aren't we connecting at that level? And we have all these traditions about writing headlines that are like brain dead stupid that were written in the linotype years to keep linotype operators from making mistake. And we're still following these same antiquated headline rules and writing these third-party, aloof kind of headlines. And when you change those headlines and you start using your and my and our, people eat it up. They love it. They feel like, oh, this story's about me, and this paper cares about me.
We got to imagine the human being looking at their phone one-on-one. Reminds me of my days being trained as a disc jockey back in the 70s. When I was in college, I went to a broadcasting classes. And they said it's called one-to-one communication. You talk one-to-one. They're listening to you. It's not in a group. So it's always you. We've got to start communicating that way more. And the media the digital media is a great place to do that. It's amazing.
And print media is a great place to do that. We just have to changing a newsroom culture, which is what I do all the time, is brutal. The only thing worse is trying to change an advertising department, but changing a newsroom is really hard. Those are tough cultures, and they're tough because they have to be tough. We have to get the paper out today. We can't miss. We can't be late. So we have these rules that are rigid, and everybody adheres to this culture because it works. It gets the paper out. But we have to do more than that now. We really have to go deeper. We have to be warmer and more personal. We have to talk to different sources and have better photography, which of course we got rid of all the photographers, which is one of the dumbest things newspapers could do.
So tap into this anger and this need for community.
Well, I'm showing a chart now that talks about, it's really devastating. People feel worse about all these things: the health and safety of my loved ones, my safety, my job security, my health, my relationships with friends, my relationships with family I don't live with, my career, ability to afford health care, my mental health, my physical health, my diet and eating. These are things that people are now way more worried about than they were before COVID.
There you go.
And we're just not tapping into that. We're not helping them cope with this. And editors will say, well, we covered COVID. Yeah, you covered the Economic Development Council and you talked to a restaurant owner who got his business closed, but we're not getting into people's lives and talking about, helping them deal with this. And another point of this was that most people think it's going to get worse. That both the economy and our health is changing. Now, I thought this was a great point that Bernard made when at the end of this thing, it's more of an observation he made, and I never would have thought of this, but he said Zoom is actually a very intimate form of communication. I don't feel that when I'm doing these things, but for a lot of people who don't get up in front of crowds and speak at conferences all the time, this is very intimate. You're letting them into your living room and you're talking to people, and it's actually, he's found that people are more willing to talk about personal things than before COVID, and they want a safe place to do that. So his observation was, again, local media are in a position to create this sense of community that people are craving. Amazing. And they want to talk about this. They want to talk to others. They don't have anybody to talk to. Maybe we could facilitate that conversation.
Our readers' lives are changing. And tell us
Yeah.
how.
There's so many ways that people have just completely changed their lives. And the biggest one, the most obvious one, is that 47% of workers moved to work from home as a result of
1 out
COVID-19.
of 2. Think about
Yeah,
that.
almost half. Almost
Almost
half of
half now of
people.
our society, and a lot of stuff looks like they may not ever go back. We
A
may
lot
have
of it.
a lot of us are going to be working from home.
And the thing that people need to know is that it's split almost 50-50. 51% of people say they prefer working from home. And 49% said, I can't wait to get back to my job and work at an office outside of my home.
So it's basically just split. Half the people say I'd rather be here. The other half says I want to be away from the kids and back at the office.
The issue of whether to work from home or at the office is now a new polarization, like so many other issues in our world. Half the people don't want to go back to work, and half of them can't wait to get back to work. In deciding, as a manager here, when it's time to bring people back to work, when it's okay to go back to work, you have to realize that half of your staff doesn't want to. And that might be different in specific workplaces and things, but how are we going to handle that? Half the reporters can't wait to get back in the newsroom, and half of them don't ever want to see the newsroom again. Don't think we need a newsroom. Wow.
And it's not industry specific. It's human specific. It might be some part of how they. I mean, I have people who work for me who can't. They say they need the collaboration, and others are saying I'm enjoying the freedom. It is an amazing. It's about our DNA and who we are. And
our team here at my office, I gave everyone the option. You can work from home or you can come in. It's fine with me. I trust all of them to work from home. They've all done it at different periods of time. We've all had to quarantine at different times because we've been exposed. Nobody's gotten COVID, but we were exposed to somebody. So different people have quarantined at different times. Everyone chose to come to the office, and they're all here. So I think different offices are different.
That's true.
And
could be a reflection of the work environment or the personality of the boss.
But as managers, as institutions, we have to be sensitive to that. But I think and again, newspaper editors would say, well, we're covering COVID like crazy. But we haven't even scratched the surface on the implications of this kind of change. So how are people getting along at home? How do they separate work from home? We should be writing stories about that. We should be helping them with this problem. Everybody is having this problem, and we're not helping. Do they work more when they work at home? Are they more productive when they work at home? Would they tell us, well, actually, I work 3 hours when I work from home? Or some people would say, hey, I'm not commuting. It just never stops. I just work I get up when I get up, and then I start working. So I work through my commuting time, and then I just keep going, and I just don't stop. And some people have found that they're working way more and they're happy with that, and some people aren't.
But it might just go back to us making sure that we allow for more dialogue around our stories. Ask the question, are you enjoying working from home? What advice would you give to others? And let them interact with the stories that we're publishing so we can become the forum where people connect. Does that
And we have to be talking more to readers and less to mayors and city councilmen and policemen and the same traditional sources we go to. We have to find better ways to reconnect with individuals, hear their voices, provide them with a forum, but also we have to give them advice. We have to know that our readers are going through this turmoil that they've never experienced in their whole life. And are we doing a reasonable job of that? How are these changes going to impact people's home value? It's completely changing. I've talked to real estate agents about this, what kind of houses people are buying. And one bedroom apartments are hard to sell these days because nobody wants, if you're working from home, you want another bedroom at least, you want a place to work. So it's changing everything. And when it's time to go back to work, are people who'd rather work from home going to quit? Are they going to change their jobs because they say, look, this is a game changer for me. I want to stay home. I'm going to find a job that allows me to work from home. Amazing. I think that'll happen a lot. I think that'll be game changing. Yes. Whole businesses will be like, oh my gosh, we lost all these people. And how is it changing the way people are spending? I hardly ever drive my car anymore. I used to travel, 2-3 times a month. I haven't been on a plane since March when I was speaking at the Arkansas Press Association. I got there, I spoke for one day, and that night they canceled the other 2 days of the conference, and I flew home on a plane with 14 people on it. And that was the last time I was on a plane or outside of the state that I live in. It's mind-boggling. And it's completely changed how our spending allocation has changed in our household. We don't eat out. We cook more. And so there's all these big things, all these huge societal things that are going on. There's more drug abuse. There's more divorces, a lot more divorces. That's a good story, by the way. Kids are falling behind in classes and learning and social development. My granddaughter is not speaking as much as they thought she should. And the doctors told my daughter-in-law that, kids aren't with other kids. That's part of how they learn to talk. They learn to talk from you, but they also learn to talk when they're with other little kids. And we're seeing that little kids now, it's taking them a little longer to learn how to talk. I mean, oh my gosh, this is mind-boggling. And there's all of these things happening. There's major shifts in spending. There's massive deficit spending going on right now in every level of government. That's going to mean taxes like crazy later. Businesses are going under. Traffic patterns are changing. There's all these big issues, but then there's the little issues. And that's the other thing that drives me crazy, because people are gardening more. We should be bringing back gardening news, because a lot of people are gardening more. People are cooking more. Did we acknowledge that? Did we start running articles about how, hey, if you're a first-time cook, here's some things you should know, or here's some new things you should try? More people took up bird feeding this year. And you know how I found this out is I have a bunch of bird feeders, and I went to buy bird seed, and every place was out of bird seed. There was a major shortage of bird seed this spring. Why? Because
if I may give some advice here, you have to find the hyper-local hook to that. So they're not just going to a national gardening website. Bring in the local voices, have them participate in the dialogue. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, the problem is we didn't even notice any of this stuff. We didn't notice that people were gardening more. How did I find that out? I have a garden. I went to buy plants this year. I bought half the plants, planted the garden, went back to buy the other half. They were sold out. They've never been sold out. They said, oh yeah, everybody's gardening. Everybody's sitting at home, looking out the window going, oh, that would be a neat place for a garden. And look at all those pretty birds. Let's feed them. Let's get a bird feeder and feed them. And this happened like everywhere. A story on page 1 that said, hey, people are feeding the birds more. Or a story about how more people are gardening and talking to the local gardening outlet and stuff about that. And so all these people who started gardening last spring, what's going to happen next spring? That'll be I don't know. Maybe they'll be like, that was way too much work, and I'm going back to work. Or maybe it'll be, I really liked gardening, and I'm going to do a lot more. Have we bumped up gardening by 3 million participants a year because of COVID? I don't know. But we're not even, that's not even on any newspaper radar. They never, I do a whole workshop about all the things we missed during COVID. People are remodeling like crazy. People got pets like crazy. All the pet places were out of pets. People are walking and using parks more. And now holidays are being redefined, maybe forever. Because we may find that, Thanksgiving without all the relatives isn't so bad.
I hear you.
Or maybe just we'll all get together on Zoom and not have to deal with, all the relatives. These are like imagine this. The earth-shattering changes are big, and we should be covering those. But these little things are really important to people. Feeding the stupid birds is really important. We missed it. We would never have thought about it. Are we thinking about bringing back more food coverage or more gardening coverage? We should be, but we have no idea. And that's why media are really missing this opportunity. It's really makes me sad. So Bernard's comment on this was the opportunity to create stronger bonds and a stronger sense of community with softer, more intimate content is very real. And I say this to editors. We're redesigning a couple of major metros in the South, and I had a meeting with the staff yesterday, and I mentioned some of this. I mentioned, you should be covering, and they're all like hard news people, and they rolled their eyes and said, well, we're not going to change what we cover. Well, of course you should. We've long encouraged our clients to cover cover life. News is part of life, and you can cover news through life. You can do the story about remodeling your kitchen and the fact that there's no appliances. We should have been doing stories about how to find an appliance, because if you remodeled your kitchen, you tore it all up and then the dishwasher never showed up because there was a shortage of all of that because everybody remodeled their kitchen. But doing the story about one couple remodeling their kitchen and how they had so much trouble finding an appliance, people relate to that. You think, well, it's not news. That is the essence of news, because that is what our readers are going through. And that's what we should think news is. We shouldn't think news is what we always thought it was. We need to learn that what our readers think is news is what's news. And if we did that, I believe that local media, print and web, could grow significantly and have much stronger bonds with their audiences.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the employees. And what do they want? I mean,
part of this was part of this survey was aimed at big companies and helping managers understand how these societal changes would impact how you would manage people. And so the survey asked, what is more important for leaders now in the wake of COVID-19? And the answers were not surprising, but not something that most managers are doing. The number one answer was they should be looking after employees. They should be looking after their health and safety. They should be communicating more. They should be being careful. They should be transparent. They should be more responsible and accountable. Like, this is not what you think of as leadership. You think of leadership as, strong leaders and making the numbers and all this stuff. And that's not what people want right now.
They want empathy.
One of the things that stood out to me was they want optimism. They need optimism from their leaders and their managers. And I think in the newspaper industry, this really is probably doubly true, because in addition to all this COVID stuff, this put more pressure on newspapers, and more reporters have lost their jobs, and Gannett is laying off people left and right again. And newspapers that don't have nearly enough staff are stripped more and more and more. I'm passionate that the only way we're going to get local media turned around is it has to be locally owned, and that these companies are going to spin off papers, and local people have to rise up and buy papers and reinvest. We're just building a website now for the Inquirer and Mirror on Nantucket Island because local people said, we're tired of this newspaper not being our newspaper anymore, and they bought it from Gannett. And we helped the Berkshire Eagle break from Media News, and we helped two small South Dakota weeklies, survive when they folded and the town bought them. I mean, there's this potential for a groundswelling of desire for local media to be locally owned. And that's been my passion and something I've been trying to do.
More and more local entrepreneurs. I keep wanting to focus this forum on that, because I'm uncovering more and more local businesses like breweries and banks that say, we'll chip in together and take this paper over and bring it back to life and make sure it serves the community as it should. This is all good stuff, but I love this thing about optimism. In other words, don't just do the fear and create fear tactic on the headlines. Maybe even give the good news that's coming out through this as well.
I'll bet if you did this survey for journalists, optimism would be one of the first things, because when you're a journalist, and I talk to journalists every day, we work with newsrooms all over the country all the time, and they're scared. They're probably more scared about their job than the general public, and they're scared about the future of the industry. And the most important thing, I think, for leaders of media companies is to help their staffs understand that there is a future. And that's why I'm kind of excited about these results, because again, they give us some markers on how we might turn this around. For years, we've been just battered, and you know this. We have all suffered through this. My company has suffered. Your work has suffered because the industry is just on this spiral downhill. When is it going to stop? How is it going to stop? Well, reforming our relationship with our readers at this time when they're looking, they're desperately. This is a sea change in our communities that if we could take advantage of, this is the way out of the spiral. Connect with people more, solve their problems, be more intimate, and we could turn this around. It's entirely possible that COVID is the answer for us, for local media.
All right, let's talk about advertising now. Let's bring this thing home. Are we giving the right messages on behalf of our advertisers to the community, and what is working and not working when it comes to that side of income? I mean, we have reader revenue and then we have advertising revenue. What is the messaging that should be out there right now for the people we serve on the advertising side?
Well, Whitman Inside Strategies was very interested in that because remember, they're working for these big companies like Coca-Cola and Apple and whatever. I don't know their client list, but they work for those kind of companies. And a big part of this survey was to help those companies learn about what messaging they should have during COVID. And 72% of people in this survey said the ads they see from companies during COVID all say the same thing, which is really true. Every ad says, "We're here for you. We're here for you. We're here for you." And basically people were saying they hate that. And they don't buy it. It's not good. To cut through the sea of sameness, successful companies will have to express what they stand for, but more importantly, they're going to have to do more than say we stand for this. They're going to have to prove it. And so 70% of people in the survey say that during these times, it's more important than ever to know what a company stands for, not just what they sell. So don't sell product as much as selling your values as a company. And don't just say you have values, but prove it. Tell us how you express those values. Bernard's comment on this is you can't push product. Focus on company values, but don't just say what your values are. Talk about how you express your values.
It's amazing that national advertisers are already picking this up. The massive Walmart campaign through Christmas this year has very little to do about buy your toys with us and more to do about how our employees are serving the community. And I'm flipping out that Lay's potato chips, yeah, they're running some ads. I'm watching them over the top, where they're trying to say have our product on the table. They're also running ads saying we're contributing to this local cause. We're contributing to this local cause. So the truth is, I think some national brands are getting the message. Now is the time to prove that you care. Is that what you're trying to say right now?
Yes, and I'll bring this back to local media and their own marketing. It's not enough that you're here. It's not enough that you've been here for 100 years. What are you doing for me? How are you doing it? How are you helping me cope? If newspapers could use that as their marketing, this is how you get out of COVID is you connect with us and we'll help you. That's the kind of messaging we're trying to get our clients to
newspapers
to
need
embrace.
To prove they're serving their local market over. Don't just say newspapers got your back. Tell us why you've got my back and
how
prove to me how.
And how you are helping me. Again, Bernard, when he talks about these sub-surveys, he uses the word intimacy all the time. And it's funny because in my presentations, I talk a lot about photography and photography, real photography, not, oh, you're a reporter, go take a snapshot. But like real photographers, one of the things that they bring to newspapers is intimacy. And if I bought a newspaper tomorrow, the first thing I would do is hire 2 photographers because there's the personal intimacy that we threw away because we said, oh, well, anybody could take pictures. Well, yeah, any reporter could take pictures that my niece could take, but I don't want to pay $2 for pictures that my niece took.
It's just so funny that we see this, that what drives social media is the pictures, but we don't do it in our own media. I mean, how many times have I screamed at audiences, if you want to get shares on Facebook, it's dogs and kids and local events and families. You know, don't show me the food, show me the family partaking of your food. Don't show me the car, hand the keys to the proud new owner, hopefully with a dog and a kid. You know what I mean? Show
Yeah,
me the
people,
interaction.
intimacy. Those local connections. There was a point where we were redesigning a paper in South Carolina, and I went to the owner and I said, I can't help you if you don't hire a photographer. And he said, well, we can't afford that, and all the reporters take their own pictures. And I said, no, I will not take this job on unless you hire a photographer. And by the way, you're not hiring the photographer. I'm hiring the photographer,
Wow.
because you have no idea what a good photographer is. And he finally let me do it, and we hired a great photographer who went on to better things, but he was outstanding. And he called me a few days after the photographer started, and he said, I will never, ever get rid of the photographer again. All I'm hearing about from people is the great pictures in the paper. I had no idea when I cut the photographers what I lost, because people didn't come and say, well, you got rid of the photographer. But the difference between a local newspaper with photos taken by reporters, and some reporters can take good photos, but they should be reporting, and we tell them to do social media and 15 other things. Hire a damn photographer, and hire a good one, and cut them loose, and suddenly your paper and your website will feel that intimacy. It will have, that's part of why we lost that intimacy. And when I'm talking to reporters, I tell them, when you sit down to write your story, the most important thing you could do to improve that story is close your eyes and imagine a person, maybe your neighbor, maybe someone you met in the course of doing this story, maybe just a composite person that you imagine a reader to be, and write for them.
Reminds me of how Morris, I'm talking the one that doesn't exist anymore out of Augusta, Georgia, when they
Yeah.
launched their websites way back in 2002 and 3, Mike Remainer started a thing called Spotted, where he just sent the shooters out to community
Yeah.
events,
Yeah.
to fairs, to
Hmm.
any sporting event, even if it was just the local, little league game, and shoot pictures and then hand cards out saying, "Go to our website. You've been spotted. You may see this photo." And it
Yeah, it
just
was a
started
great campaign. Yeah.
building tons. But that's how you
People
came out
ate
of
it
the
up.
box. But I mean, well, anyway, we got to bring this thing home. I love this final quote. And this is from the gentleman at Wins, the company that did the research. We're telling all our clients to go local, and local media are the perfect partner. There
And
is
he's
opportunity.
talking to national Fortune 500 companies. That's who he's talking to with this. It's an opportunity. It's just laying there. Just grab
So,
it.
so bring it all home with like your quick bullets, Bill. Give us the final takeaways, in your opinion, from this amazing study that you thank you for sharing.
Well, the first thing is it should be heartwarming to local media publishers and local reporters who've been struggling through all this hell and COVID and all the things they've gone through all these years, to know that trust in local media is excellent. It's way higher than those goofy numbers you hear about national media. People trust their local media, and I think that applies to broadcast as well as newspapers. Um, that 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 we have this bigger audience and we're all excited about it, but we're not going to hold it, and we're not going to get them to pay for it unless we connect with those readers in new and different ways, unless we are more intimate and smarter about the kind of stories we cover and the way that we write them. We've got to talk to more people, more regular people. We got to provide them with a forum, and we got to help them through this, not by telling them that the city council closed the restaurants again, but we have to get to the level of addressing they're scared. They're scared. We need to hold their hand and help them through this. And if we can pull that off, if we can really, change our culture to be open to different kinds of coverage and different kinds of writing, which is what we do at Creative Circle and have been doing for, it's it's sad because we've been doing this for 20 years and it's like it's barely made a dent. I think COVID is the way to stop the spiral. Wow. Think
Well,
about that.
there's
It's really amazing.
opportunity. This is amazing. And this is the messaging that you're giving us is something that would have been there anyway. But how many times in this forum have we said that crisis accelerates change.
Right.
This crisis has accelerated an audience that is craving now the news we should have been doing the whole time, which is speaking to our readers, not just reporting the news. Bill, I really appreciate your valuable time. Creative Circle Media, again, full disclosure, we love the work you do for E&P. We love the work you do for other associations. You support the industry. How can someone get a hold of you if they need to contact you, Bill?
Well, our website is creativecirclemedia.com, and my email is bill@creativecirclemedia.com. And my number is 401-455-1555. And we're here to help you with software. We build and host websites. We have truly radically different software for websites than you see anywhere else. We're a design firm. We still do print redesigns. We're currently redesigning 2 large metros in the South. We do training. We do consulting. We try to come up with new ways of connecting with readers. And we're very passionate about local media ownership. Almost all of our clients are family-owned companies. We work with Chicago Tribune and NBC and all these big companies, McClatchy. We've done a lot of work for them over the years when they were around. But we're really passionate about making sure local papers are local.
Thank you so much, Bill. And once again, the slides, if you're just listening to this, and hopefully we talked through the bullets so everybody who is listening to this broadcast and not seeing the visuals gain the content. Go to the page, obviously editorandpublisher.com/podcasts, and download the report. Bill, you stay healthy, you stay well, and thanks for your time. We really appreciate you sharing this information with the industry.
Thank you.